I don't like what he said. I don't have a problem with Bruce Arians himself, but I don't like what he said, and here's why. I totally understand what Mike Tomlin once told a whole bunch of people. You tolerate somebody until you find something better, and I get that. I get that. Well, Antonio Brown is one of the best in the game, one of the best this game has ever seen, to be quite honest with you. Is he a diva? Is he being a diva? Sure. Do I like the way that he acted the last week? Not at all. Do I like the fact, me personally, just speaking for myself, to know the paucity of black coaches, to see what has transpired in terms of these coaching hirings, and to have a guy like Mike Tomlin who's proven himself on this level, to show him the lack of respect that was shown to him, or to be oblivious to how your actions would potentially affect him, really, really bothers me and frustrates me. Having said that, in all my years of covering sports, I've always been told about the divas at the wide receiver position. We religiously have heard that throughout decades. And so for me, with people just commenting about Antonio Brown all over the place, when no one brings up Big Ben Roethlisberger, is really, really a problem for me. Antonio Brown and Ben Roethlisberger have not been getting along. That is the bottom line. Just because Ben Roethlisberger didn't reveal that on a radio show doesn't mean it's not so. I can assure you, Antonio Brown has not liked Ben Roethlisberger this year. And if you are a wide receiver that doesn't necessarily get along with your quarterback at a particular juncture, even though I'm not absolving Antonio Brown, all I'm saying is everybody who's got their 2 cents to provide from the peanut gallery, it really irks my nerves that all I'm hearing about is Antonio Brown, and nobody has brought up the quarterback. Nobody mentions Big Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, there's something that's going on here, and I really, really would wish that folks would touch on that, because there's something going on with that relationship, and I'm going to leave it at that.
I just want to say something really quickly. I 100% agree with you, because it drove me nuts when he was throwing his teammates under the bus and he made the comments about Juju Smith-Schuster. I don't think, even if he felt that way, you should share that publicly as a leader. But one thing I will say about Bruce Arians, and Damian, maybe you can speak to it more so. I only met him briefly. I covered an Arizona game at NFL Network. But he is such a nice guy. And from everyone I heard, he's such a solid guy. So for any coach to come out and say it, I guess I give it more value because it's coming from someone like him.
Bruce Arians is one of the most authentic coaches I've ever been around.
I agree.
I mean, when he speaks, you listen. He knows players. He understands players. Do I agree with what he said about Antonio Brown? I do. Antonio Brown is, no one can question his talent. No one can question the production that he has had throughout his career. One thing I'll say about Antonio Brown is it seems like he's like a caricature of himself. He's the social media and all those type of things. And I think sometimes when you've had the success that Antonio Brown has, it seems like it's spilling over into the workplace, whether it be the Facebook Live in the locker room and these type of incidences. And I think part of the, you touched on Big Ben. I totally agree with you on Big Ben. There's no question about it. I think also part of this whole situation is that he was upset that Juju Smith-Schuster got MVP of that team because Antonio Brown is about Antonio Brown. There's no question about that. So absolutely what Bruce Arians said, I think is absolutely true, because he saw a different side of Antonio Brown when they were first together in Pittsburgh, and to see how everything has been
Could you imagine comparing that to Larry Fitzgerald? Could you imagine like trying to compare the two and be like, wait, this guy has no maintenance versus...
There's only one Larry Fitzgerald out here.
I want to get to your point about why aren't people talking about Big Ben more? And Molly, you seconded that, and I understand what you're saying. Here's the thing. If Ben Roethlisberger was a wideout, not a quarterback, he wouldn't be getting away with that. And especially if they had another wideout who could be a number one. If they had a number 2 quarterback who was younger than Roethlisberger, a lot cheaper than Roethlisberger, and they thought is a legitimate franchise quarterback, also Roethlisberger may have a problem. Roethlisberger benefits from the position he plays, the scarcity at that position, and the importance of that
position. See, I'm not waiting. Hold on.
I want to say one thing. We called out Kyrie the other day for the same thing. For Kyrie calling out his teammates, and he got bad press.
I want to say one thing.
Well, he did.
There's nothing worse as a former player than a quarterback who thinks they're above the team. A guy who
Is that Roethlisberger?
Yes, I get everything that I see from Roethlisberger is a guy who thinks he's above the other 52 guys on the roster.
The one thing that I want to say is this. You are a guy like Antonio Brown. First of all, and you can speak to this if you want to, there are players, the quarterback position is absolutely correct. But there are players who will look at Big Ben Roethlisberger and say, if he was a black quarterback, he wouldn't get away with that. He wouldn't get away with the stuff that Ben Roethlisberger has gotten away with saying. Then you have a situation with Antonio Brown. And remember this, right or wrong, when you sit up there and you grind and you grind and you grind, and you ultimately get to the mountaintop in terms of being recognized as one of the elite at the game, and your work ethic is not questioned and your level of productivity is not questioned, your mentality is, what's the problem? Now, I've been waiting for this moment where I'm validated and recognized, not just monetarily, but in terms of the respect from my peers. And I have my own quarterback saying stuff like, I would have thrown it to Juju Smith every down. And doing the
You're
kind
making a
of
different
things.
point. This is the point you're making, and I don't disagree with it. Were Ben Roethlisberger an African-American quarterback, would the prediction be that more or fewer words would be written about him throwing teammates under the bus like that? My prediction would be far more words would be written and said about it in the media. About that, we agree. But I don't think that gives Antonio Brown cover in terms of diva behavior.
No, I don't think it gives him cover, but I do think it explains the level of frustration that would lead him to do something so uncharacteristic like he did the last week of the season. Again, not absolving him, but recognizing that he wanted to bring attention to the level of frustration
That's a fair
that he's
point.
feeling.